Welcome to the Senate Labor and Industry Committee. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. We have a quorum. The Labor and Industry Committee will come to order. Members, today we are going to hear Senate File 475. Senator Mathews, if you would come to the testifying table. Senator Liskey, will you please move Senate File 475, be recommended to pass and re-referred to the State and Local Government Committee?
I will move that to happen, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Liskey. Senator Mathews, before you explain the bill, do you have an author's amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. I have the A1 amendment.
Senator Rarick, would you move that?
I will move the A1 amendment.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Amendment passed. Senator Mathews, you will please explain the purpose of your bill for Senate File 475.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my honor to bring Senate File 475 before you today. The purpose of the bill is to expand the protections granted to potential whistleblowers in the state of Minnesota. The basis for this bill is that the amount of fraud that has gained public attention has been growing in the past few years. Over the interim of this year and the year before, we did have news stories breaking regularly. Some have garnered significant attention, some more than others. And that's the bad news. But the good news, members, is that both political parties are coming into this session stating that combating waste, fraud, and abuse is a priority this session. The governor has brought forward proposals, as well as legislators from both parties are bringing forward potential proposals to try to protect Minnesota's tax dollars that they entrust the state with. So this bill seeks to expand the protections for employees who speak up and identify issues of potential waste, fraud, and abuse in the funds that are overseen by the state agencies. It expands the list of the number of potential reportees that these members can report to and get protection from. If you look on lines 211 to 213 of the bill, the list will then expand to include anyone who is reporting to their employer, to any governmental body, to a law enforcement official, to the legislative auditor, to a member of the legislature, or to a constitutional officer. I will note that with the A1 amendment, we changed the language that's on line 211 to mirror language used in other places of statute for the OIG in the education agency that was passed in 2023 and edited in 24. That's in statute 127. We're largely mirroring the definitions of, instead of using the words gross mismanagement, the A1 amendment modified it to waste, fraud, or abuse in programs of a state agency or political subdivision. So we've tried to streamline the language. The A1 amendment largely used definitions that are already found in state law or in some cases applicable federal law to make consistent definitions throughout the language. You may hear an argument that some of these protections are already in law, and I'd like to highlight for your understanding that I do recognize that there are some protections in law. I believe more protections would be better. I know that some still have concerns about even coming to testify to this bill over not wanting to be publicly identified. So I think that there is a question to be asked if the current law goes far enough. And by taking additional steps of getting added protections, it will help us as legislators have as much information as we can have to know where we need to direct our attention to most benefit our constituents and the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota. So that is the background of my bill, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to take questions or go to the testifiers as you see fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. I think we'll have the testifiers come forward. Devin Bruce, Minnesota Association of Professional Employees, and Ms. Luger Nicolia, Education Minnesota, if you're here. Mr. Bruce, if you want to identify yourself for the record and bring your testimony. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the invite to both you and to Senator McEwen. For the record, my name is Devin Bruce. I'm the current Director of Legislative and Political Affairs at the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. We represent over 18,500 state employees across all agencies, boards, and commissions. I first want to also take the time to thank Senator Mathews for his slightly different approach than what we've kind of seen in the other body, and focusing on how to better protect employees who feel compelled to come forward with concerns about services and procedures within within state and public government. Senate File 475 proposes to expand protections to certain public employees under the Minnesota Whistleblower Protection Act for reporting gross mismanagement or gross waste of funds. While I believe this does expand some of the additional protections to public employees who are currently not covered, in certain cases, I'm concerned that it creates, particularly for state employees, a further tiering of the systems given the complexity under this Section 6 of the Minnesota Whistleblower Protection Law, where it currently defines as only classified government employees in the state service and not unclassified employees. Employees in classified service enjoyed much broader protection under this law, particularly under the subject matter which can be reported. And to simplify and rectify kind of this disparity, I'd recommend amending Section 6 to cover all public employees at all levels of government, not just the state government employees. I also have some concerns about the inclusion of gross mismanagement, as there's kind of a fine line that employees must walk to avoid triggering other HR policies, particularly on respectful workplace policies for the state employees, as well as certain other factors like general harassment or the broader term of mismanagement. So the broad scope, I believe, currently under Section 6 would capture what I believe the author intends to do in this regard. As for amending the section to include definitions regarding waste and abuse, there's some concern among many of us who I think understand the intent, but unlike fraud, there's little legal guidance except in cases of misfeasance or malfeasance that would invoke civil or criminal processes. I'm also a little concerned that employees may attempt to rely on this section due to its loose and pervasive common usage as opposed to its legal definitions. As with other definitions, I believe the scope under Section 6 would also incorporate these concerns. Lastly, I want to flag just a couple things that aren't in the bill that should probably be discussed going forward. First pertains to what's being what's obtained and shared regarding the information, which is largely but not exclusively governed by Chapter 13 of the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. For example, information on grant applications and contracts have various levels of classification and not just on the type of information, but where it is in the approval process for those grants or contracts. The Whistleblower Act states that despite having these protections for sharing info with certain actors, the rules and regulations on what is shared and by what means remain unaffected by the protections. I would also hate that public employees watching this or some of the other media coverage, particularly on this important topic, think that they have some new protections when they currently don't, and would attempt to rely on that and face discipline, discharge, or retaliation. The other section that I would like to see addressed going forward is what is considered retaliation, as it ranges from bold acts like termination, discipline, discharge, or subtle ones like arbitrarily denying leave, overtime requests, or other compensation structures that are currently enjoyed by employees. And even under collective bargaining agreements, employers have certain unilateral authority to revoke statuses like telework agreements, or for our temp unclassified employees at state government to end their appointments. Even under a collective bargaining agreement, we still have no recourse on some of these. So I would love to work with the author going forward on these, and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce, for your testimony.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Marty.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Bruce. Your comments on page 2, line 6. So in other words, if you're unclassified service, you're not protected under this, and you were urging it be for not just classified state government, but you were saying any state or local government official.
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
didn't
Chair.
hear, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I just was trying to get what you were saying there.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Marty. Yes, currently under Section 6, it only applies to classified employees under state government. And in the definition, the subjects in which they are able to disclose to the legislative auditor, legislators, or constitutional officers or their supervisors is quite broad, and I think encompasses a lot of things beyond just normal fraud, waste, and abuse, but also talking about their jobs and processes that they may seek improvement on.
Senator Marty.
Mr. Chair, well, I don't know if this bill is in that category, but it does seem to me we ought to be looking beyond classified service and whistleblowers, whatever type of position they're in should be covered. On your other comment about how a lot of other things where they could discriminate against you by denying you work conditions, working remotely or asking for time off or whatever, it seems to me that that would be covered under the prohibited action. You can't discharge, discipline, penalize, or otherwise retaliate or discriminate against. I share your concern about the first one. This one I kind of think is already covered, but is that your reaction to that?
Thank you, Senator Marty. Go ahead, Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Marty. Typically, that's what we would also think, but we've seen instances where there's just a supervisor that will deny a vacation request. And they do have certain exceptions for denying requests under like short staffing or whatever, but it would be hard to substantiate unless there's like a very public eye on the requestee that they're being retaliated against.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Marty.
Only other thing, I hear your point there. I'm not sure how you tighten that up, but because it sounds to me what they'd be doing is illegal retaliation. But the other one is just for Senator Mathews. I think we might be looking at change that employee in classified service to just employee in service of state government, in effect, state employees. I know.
So, Senator Marty, you proposing you want an amendment, or?
Mr. Chair, I guess I am interested in employee, yes, if Senate Council could draft something like that.
Senator Marty, I'd like to go to the other testifier now, and then we'll work on that. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Bruce, and thank you for that clarification, because I, kind of hopping on Senator Marty's line of questioning, when I saw classified service, I guess I was thinking more confidential service versus an actual employee classification, and maybe you can clarify what that means.
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Pratt. There are two broad categories of classified and unclassified employees. What you're thinking for confidential employees is what would be in the unclassified service. It's a common misconception because of the verbiage that we use. Unclassified employees you'd find as appointees in certain levels of government, confidential employees who would not be covered under collective bargaining agreements or represented by unions.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Pratt?
thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also wanted to follow up on the comment around gross mismanagement and gross waste. When I see the amendment, I don't see a definition of gross. Senator Mathews or Mr. Bruce, can you help me understand maybe what we were trying to get at in that new line, and should it, because I also don't see a definition of mismanagement, and I don't know if there needs to be a definition of mismanagement. I'm just wondering, particularly around the concept of gross.
Mr. Bruce, or Senator Mathews, did you have a comment?
Yep, Mr. Chair, the A1 amendment eliminated the words gross mismanagement or gross waste from the bill. So with the A1 amendment, it reads, a public employee in good faith reports fraud, waste, or abuse in programs of a state agency or political subdivision. From lines 120 and 121 of the A1 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Mathews, I guess I got to get back up to speed on reading bills and amendments. I appreciate it.
Mr. Bruce, did you have any other comment? So we'll move to the next testifier. Ms. Luger Nikolai, Education Minnesota. If I didn't get your name right, let me know how to pronounce it, and introduce yourself for the committee.
You're darn close, Chair Dornink. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Meg Luger Nikolai, and I'm an attorney for Education Minnesota. We represent 85,000 school professionals throughout the state of Minnesota. As members of the committee are likely aware, public employees do enjoy a variety of protections for their speech in and about their workplace. They, of course, enjoy the support of the First Amendment. They additionally enjoy the support of POWRA, that is a significantly protective statute. And there are many other statutes that protect employee speech, things like OSHA, not only the Whistleblower Act, the Workers' Compensation Act, the Minnesota Human Rights Act. Many of those statutes, while providing substantive protection for employees, also provide protection for employees who may report violations of them. Senate File 475 is an important gloss up on this existing protection, a glow up, as my kids would probably say, that provides reporting opportunities for conduct that may not squarely implicate a particular statute, like the Human Rights Act. And this is something that we have been concerned about at Education Minnesota. In the last 3 years, a number of school districts have, for example, done things like banned rainbow flags from their buildings or rejected student artwork for being too seemingly LGBTQ friendly. And those actions may make it more likely that an LGBTQ student will not feel safe at school. It may impact their access to school, but it may not necessarily squarely implicate the Human Rights Act. But it could court litigation, and that is an area of mismanagement that our employees would definitely want to enjoy protection from if they seek to report it. In other instances, we've had school districts who have tried to reject integration aid, clearly a waste of resources. Other districts have not complied with the mandates that this body adopted relating to the READ Act, which of course was about fostering literacy amongst our students. In one case, a district has hired a consultant to basically criticize the READ Act and criticize the implementation of instruction. And in other cases, districts have refused to release to teachers money that was allocated for their compensation for participating in training. Also a waste of resources. Finally, we have instances in which districts, for example, take blanket policies concerning special education services, saying we don't, as a matter of policy, permit a one-to-one paraprofessional relationship with a student, whether they need it or not. That's not individualized, that's not consistent with state law, and that's something for which people should have the protection to report to MDE. I share with Mr. Bruce the concern about Chapter 13 because there are certain aspects of student educational data and personnel data that would retain its classification based on the existing language in the statute that may make it actually more difficult to make a meaningful report if there's stuff that you literally can't talk about because it is a non-public type of data. So offering a little bit of a safety valve for that might be helpful. But given the definition of abuse in the A1 amendment, I would feel confident in advising my members that if Senate File 475 passes, that they will have a significant amount of protection if they have concerns about mismanagement occurring in schools. So we really appreciate this legislation. We think that it will democratize the public workplace. We wish to thank Senator Mathews for helping provide an avenue for our members to speak up on behalf of students, including some of our most marginalized students.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, I've really had this problem this session with, in both this room and in 1200, in being able to hear people at the witness table. I don't know if they need to talk really close to the microphone or if there's somebody in the back that can kind of turn up the sound, but it's very difficult to hear.
Chair Dornink,
Yes,
I apologize, and I will submit written testimony if that's helpful.
thank you. So,
Sorry.
Senator Marty, so we have a amendment, council has amendment.
Yes.
She could read it, and you can see if
Please.
it's,
So, Mr. Chair and members, the oral amendment would be on line 2.6, delete "an" and insert a public. And then after employee, delete "in the classified service of state government." So it would apply to public employees and employer under the definition in Section 181.931, employer applies to, if it's a public employer, applies to state government, state and political subdivisions. So this would be, public employee would mean state employees and employees of political subdivisions. And it would make it more consistent with the way it is in Clause 5, and then Clause 6 would be the same. And then the new language in Clause 7 also references public employees. So I hope that is what the testifier was wanting. If not, please let me know, and we can redo the oral amendment.
Mr. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for two sections, I would also include, and I don't have the line numbers, but towards the end of that section, it says relates to state services, and I would replace that with public and including state finances, changing state to public.
So, Mr. Chair, adding to that oral amendment, it would be on line 2.7, delete state and insert public, and on line 2.8, delete state and insert public.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle-Fontaine. Mr. Bruce, does that look good? Senator Marty?
Mr. Chair, that sounds good. I wonder if Senate Council could read the entire Clause 6.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, and Senator Marty. So it would read as follows. Clause 6 on line 2.6, a public employee communicates information that I guess maybe that should be that the public employee in good faith believes to be truthful and accurate, and that relates to public services, including the financing of public services too. So I would amend maybe the oral amendment on line 2.7, before employee, insert public there as well. And I'm not sure if you want me to reread the whole thing, but.
Thank you, appreciate that.
consistent.
Senator
Mr.
Marty?
Chair, I'd like to move that amendment.
So moved. Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Marty, I agree with your amendment, and Mr. Bruce, I like the addition of public. I'm going to vote for the amendment, but I am concerned on one point, and it came up over the interim, where the Metro Transit Police Chief was terminated and was not classified as a public employee. And so I think in consultation with this, I think we need to look at the definition of what a public employee is as well, because my fear is that we might fall into a loophole in some of these cases, and I think we need to tighten it up. This is a good start, but maybe between now and when this comes up for a final vote, we can take a look at that.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will accept Senator Marty's amendment. I appreciate the work on this, and I invite further work on this. I know it has state government as its next stop, and all the parties are welcome to keep working with me as this is moving forward. Thank you.
So Senator Marty has moved this amendment. Is there any other comments on the amendment? Any questions? So we will vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The amendment passes. Any other amendments? Final words on the bill, Senate File 475, Senator Mathews.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the discussion on this. We're trying to get at a problem that has been gaining that all of us recognize needs to be something that we bring some more attention to protect our state agencies, make sure that monies are actually going to be used for the purposes that they are funded for, and that we protect the tax dollars that all of our constituents are paying. So I think we've had a good discussion here in this committee. I will pledge to continue to work on this as it's moving through the process, and I'd urge members to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. Any other comments on the bill? Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill forward and for the good discussion around this. I will note that when we saw this bill, we learned that it has been around for a while, or an iteration of it, and in fact now with our power sharing agreement, we have 2 former chairs of this committee, so it would be interesting in having some discussion as to why this wasn't heard before. So I think it provides, I'd love to see more protections for workers in Minnesota and expanding our whistleblower protections. So I'm very pleased to see this, and hope the work will continue to really hone in on the definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. So Senator Liskey, will you renew your motion to pass, recommend to pass Senate File 475 to be, as amended, be recommended to pass and re-referred to the State Local Government Committee?
I will make that motion.
And so we will vote. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. So now we're going to go to the next bill, and that's my bill. So I'll call Senator Rarick up to be chair while I testify.
Senator Dornink, if you are prepared, would you like to make a motion to have Senate File 310 in front of the committee and be recommended to pass and referred to Ag?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Senator Dornink, to your bill.
Senate File 310 is simply an exemption for the family farm or family farm corporation 5 or few employees. And this one actually was passed out of this committee last year, the Senate position, and there was 2 amendments. The first one, well, they went together, but there was 28 days or fewer. Was an exemption for the sugar beet farmers. And then this part was also tied to that one, which is the 5 exemptions, or 5 employees or less. But I do want to thank the co-authors on the bill, Senator Kupek, Hochschild, Dreheim, and Putnam. And I also wanted we have agriculture is such an important part of Minnesota and the economy. So I just want to give a few facts that, I'm in the Ag committee also, and just the importance of it. And so I'll just give a few facts here. There's 65,000 farms in Minnesota, And here's an interesting fact. The average farmer is approximately 400 acres. And when we think of farming today, we think the huge farms, but yet there's still 400 acres. And back in the 70s, when my parents and I grew up on the farm, that's what the size of our farm. Generates $105 billion in sales, $13 billion in in the crop sector, almost $9 billion in livestock, $10 billion in exports. And the agriculture is supporting over close to 400,000 jobs. 51% of our state land is agriculture. And the dairy farm industry has, there used to be 95% more dairy farms than there are now. There's about approximately 1,700 left right now. And so this does affect those farmers, but also others. But this importance of agriculture in our state. And many times there's carve-outs and things that are different for agriculture. And this was just a small carve-out for them. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to call have some of my testifiers come forward and talk more about the people that are requesting it and how important this is.
Very good. Members, we will go to our testifiers. We have a list of 8, so members, I would like to let our testifiers go through, make their statements, and then we will come back to member questions, and we'll maybe try to, if a member has a question for one person, then we'll look to other questions for that same testifier and try to get through it in that way. First on the list is Lauren Schothorst, and followed by Josiah Moore. Ms. Schothorst, if you'll identify yourself, and you can begin.
Is this loud enough? Senator Pappas, you probably don't want to hear what I have to say, though. Good afternoon, members of the Senate Labor Committee. My name is Lauren Schothorst, and I'm the Director of Workplace Management and Workforce Development Policy for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, a statewide organization representing more than 6,300 businesses and more than 500,000 employees throughout Minnesota. A majority of our members are small to mid-sized businesses, and many are ag-based, ag manufacturing, and ag-adjacent businesses. It's great to be here today to share our support for Senate File 310, a bipartisan bill that modifies the new unfunded sick and safe time mandate imposed on Minnesota's small agricultural employers last session, and requests that it be further amended to apply to all of our state's small businesses across all industries. Due to time constraints, my full remarks can be found in your packets, along with several Minnesota Chamber Foundation reports that establish the economic context our organization uses for evaluating public policy when looking at key competitiveness factors of GDP, job growth, our workforce issues, as well as smart public investment. To Senate File 310, last session, the Chamber testified on numerous occasions with our opposition to this mandate in the first place. We sought to limit its size and scope, provide our smallest businesses with some relief from its financial and operational impacts, and ensure employers have some flexibility to manage the new requirements in ways that are feasible and not cost prohibitive. We also highlighted the would-be burdens of the onerous compliance requirements and the resulting confusion from its rollout and implementation that you've been hearing about in your districts since this mandate went into effect. Industries across Minnesota's diverse economy are experiencing several troubling trends, including high costs, steep increases in regulation and business mandates on workplaces that are already heavily regulated in Minnesota. While the agricultural sector is no different in experiencing these broader trends, the impact of one-size-fits-all mandates do impact different industries in uniquely challenging ways. Many in our agricultural sector are already experiencing the effects of the workforce shortage and are specifically challenged by the sick and safe time mandate. Balance is necessary to protect public interest and promote economic growth. Yet employers and employees are already realizing the impact of the escalating number of unbalanced mandates from the last 2 years. The Chamber recently spent a few weeks on the road visiting businesses across the state in Mankato, Hastings, Duluth, Chanhassen, St. Cloud, Hermantown, Wilmer, and others. And the collective response is that the sick and safe time mandate is being misused by employees, as leave use patterns have started changing due to this mandate, causing legitimate operational challenges and cost impacts across the board. This is largely due to the fact that the mandate is so broad and the rules for requesting notice and documentation are so limited. along with increased direct costs and the operational and staffing challenges for this additional unaccounted for paid time off, the staff resources required, in many cases hiring new staff entirely, to spend on compliance is constraining growth for small businesses. Specific industries, such as agriculture and small and medium-sized businesses, are disproportionately impacted, as they have less budgetary flexibility, less HR capacity or expertise, and instead should be focusing on growth and investing in their workforce. As a direct response to cost increases, these employers are cutting back on hiring, benefits, services, and increasing prices as examples. As we shared last session and will again this year, our members continue to request reasonable limits on the scope of the paid leave mandates, and our smallest businesses need some relief from the financial and operational impacts of them. The Chamber is looking forward to working with members of this committee to retain a strong quality of life by pursuing reasonable bipartisan solutions that strengthen the economy while keeping costs manageable, adjusting uncompetitive new laws, and reducing barriers and other cost burdens undermining growth. Because Senate File 310 would amend the existing sick and safe time law to achieve some of these outcomes, the Chamber respectfully urges your support for this bipartisan bill. Furthermore, the Chamber requests it be amended to apply to all industries so that small businesses across Minnesota's entire economy can experience some relief from this onerous mandate. Thank you for the opportunity to share this perspective with the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, please identify yourself and you can begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Rarick, and members of the committee. My name is Josiah Moore, and I am the Legislative Director at the Department of Labor and Industry. It's good to be before you today with a speaking part this time. I am here to testify with the department's concerns on Senate File 310, the bill to exempt individuals on certain family farms from earned sick and safe time. Based on Minnesota unemployment insurance data, the department estimates that there are about 1,500 establishments and 2,500 employees that would be impacted by this change. This is likely an undercount because not all agricultural establishments are reflected in unemployment insurance system data. DLI is concerned about the negative impacts the bill could have for these 2,500 workers. The Earned Sick and Safe Time law sets a floor for all employees and employers in the state. That floor is 1 hour for every 30 hours worked and 48 hours per year. This floor was created to ensure that workers do not have to choose between their paycheck and recovering from an illness, caring for a child during a school closure, or seeking assistance due to domestic abuse, stalking, or sexual assault. This floor was designed to not take into account employer size or industry, to recognize the fact that workers have the same needs regardless of the sector they work in or the size of their employer. One of the department's main concerns with exempting these agricultural workers from the Earned Sick and Safe Time law is that agricultural employment is hard, sometimes dangerous work. According to the North Carolina Farm Worker Health Program, these workers do labor-intensive work that is prone to repetitive motion injuries, respiratory illness, toxic chemical injuries. These workers need earned sick and safe time. You may have seen a recent post on the Minnesota Department of Health's website indicating that avian influenza or bird flu is an occupational hazard that impacts agricultural workers particularly. The CDC recommends that workers exposed to bird flu stay home and isolate. Earned sick and safe time gives them the means to do this under current law. And this doesn't just benefit these workers, it benefits public health by giving them the means to stay home in situations where they've been exposed to a highly communicable disease. The department is concerned that rolling back protections for these workers could have negative impacts for the workers and for public health. Finally, I want to note that the department has some technical concerns about how the 5 or fewer employee threshold would work. Agricultural work is highly seasonal, and the number of employees fluctuates frequently, which could make it difficult for an employer or the department to determine whether employees are entitled to earned sick and safe time. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the department's concerns with Senate File 310, and I'll remain in the committee for questions. We also have an expert, Pete Nicolai, program administrator, who works with earned sick and safe time.
Thank you very much. Our next two testifiers will be Hunter Peterson and Darren Broughton. Mr. Peterson, please identify yourself and you can begin.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. My name is Hunter Peterson, and I'm the Public Policy Specialist at Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation, where I have the privilege of representing over 31,000 family farm and ranch members from across the state. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate File 310, which expands the agricultural exemption for earned sick and safe time to farms with 5 or less full-time employees. Farm Bureau appreciates the existing ag exemption to the ESST law for seasonal employees. This is particularly helpful for row crop farmers during busy times such as harvest. However, this seasonal exemption is of limited utility to farms and ranches with a focus on livestock. Senate File 310 better addresses the needs of livestock operations who often have 1 or 2 full-time employees to assist with caring for the animals. Unlike other industries, farmers cannot delay or defer essential tasks. Livestock require constant attention regardless of circumstances. Even a short-term disruption in labor can have cascading effects on production, income, and the farm's ability to sustain itself. Finding reliable, consistent labor is already a challenge for farmers, and this bill is a step towards solving that problem. Farm Bureau is grateful to Senator Dornink for his bipartisan work on this, and to his co-authors, Senator Kupek, Senator Hochschild, Senator Draheim, and Senator Putnam. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Broughton, please identify yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Darren Broughton. I am the Executive Director with Minnesota AgriGrowth. We are a coalition of more than 150 farm organizations, agribusiness, and allies across Minnesota committed to advancing food and agriculture in the state. I appreciate the work that's gone into this bill. I'll share a little bit here with you today. Minnesota, along with the United States, is amid a great farm recession. Inflation, extreme weather, major animal health events, turmoil in our global markets, and disruptions in our supply chain have created a perfect storm for Minnesota farm families and the local businesses that serve them. On average, the net farm income has decreased in Minnesota by nearly 24% over the last 2 years, and there is no relief in sight for this year. Coming out of a great farm recession will not be easy, but there are some significant reforms and tweaks that Minnesota can do in a bipartisan manner to help rebound our farm economy. One of those items is this modest change to earn safe and sick time. Yesterday, I spent my day with more than 300 farmers from across Minnesota, and every single one of them that I spoke to wants to make sure that their family members get the care and time they need and when they need it. But it's important to recognize that our family farms operate very differently than a typical business. These farms are often managed and operated by multiple generations of family members, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, and aunts, who share not only the work but also the financial risk and rewards with their farms. The collaborative and intergenerational nature of these farms sets them apart from other businesses and other industries in Minnesota. On a family farm, the line between the personal and professional life is often blurred. Family members work together to maintain their livelihood, making their labor contributions very deeply personal and intertwined with their home life. The close-knit family network is immediate and responsive. If a family member falls ill, others quickly step up and fill those duties, ensuring that the farm continues to operate smoothly. Farm work also means that certain tasks, like milking cows and feeding livestock, must be done daily, and finding temporary replacements with the necessary skills and knowledge is often impractical or nearly impossible. Farming is extremely hard work with numerous challenges, and no better proof point than the fact that Minnesota has lost more than 13,000 farms since 1997. That is 4 out of 25 farms that have disappeared in less than 30 years. That's why this modest change to earn safe and sick time is so important and so unique, because Minnesota farm families are unique and important. And that would be a powerful message that this legislature could send to Minnesota farm families this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton, and I apologize for getting your name wrong. I'm assuming with a former hockey player in Minnesota, you get that fairly often.
In elementary school, I just pretended that Neil was my uncle. It worked quite well for me.
All right. Our next two testifiers will be John Beshy and Stu Laurie. Mr. Beshy, please identify yourself and you can begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Senate Labor Committee. My name is John Beshy, and I'm the State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business in Minnesota. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on Senate File 310. NFIB represents over 10,000 small businesses that are located in every corner of Minnesota and are comprised of a diverse array of industries, including businesses in Minnesota's agricultural sector. Our members vary in size, but our average member has 10 employees or less. Our mission is to promote and protect the rights of our members to own, operate, and grow their businesses. NFIB was strongly opposed to the Earned Sick and Safe Time law that was enacted in 2023, which placed an unfunded mandate on our state's smallest businesses at a time when many could least afford it. While we remain opposed to the underlying mandate, we support the exemption for small employers in the agricultural sector, and we believe that this is a good start in making the requirements more flexible for small business in Minnesota. However, a broader exemption is necessary if small businesses are to be provided with relief from this mandate. Senate File 310 rightly recognizes that the one-size-fits-all nature of this mandate poses operational and financial challenges that are unique to small businesses in the agricultural sector, but that same principle applies to small businesses across all sectors of the economy. Small businesses have a diverse array of workforce needs and operational challenges that vary based on each unique industry. They generally operate on increasingly thin margins and vanishing bottom lines, and labor costs are often cited as one of the single most important issues that many small businesses face. Small businesses work hard to take care of their employees, but the one-size-fits-all nature of this mandate makes it difficult to provide flexible and accommodating solutions that balance the needs of employers and employees. As such, our members continue to request common sense steps to reduce the costs and make the mandate more workable for small businesses. In closing, we strongly encourage members of the committee to support this bipartisan bill, and we request that it be amended to provide broader relief to all of Minnesota's small businesses. I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to share our comments on this bill, and I look forward to working with members of the committee to further address these issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Laurie, please identify yourself and you may begin.
Thank you, Chair Rarick and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stu Laurie. I'm Government Relations Director for Minnesota Farmers Union, grassroots general farm organization that has represented family farmers and rural communities since we were founded in 1918. And I'm here to share our support for Senator Dornink's SF 310 to exempt farms with under less than 5 employees from the requirements under Earned Sick and Safe Time. This was a position that we came to after being approached on the bill and came and had conversations with both our elected leadership and also some members who would be affected by this policy. And the consensus was that flexibility for small farmers would be meaningful and appreciated. And I say flexibility because I did talk to one member who is complying and said, I'll plan to continue to offer this benefit, and I think I can manage it, and we'll continue to do that. And I talked to others who very much appreciate the flexibility. And I'll also acknowledge too, I'm new to this committee, right? You've been talking about this for 2 years. This is the first time I'm appearing before you to talk about it. I want to acknowledge that, and my intent is not to cover ground that you've already covered or anything like that, but to share feedback that we're hearing from our members as they start to interact with this new policy and find out what it means for their operation. And so just some feedback that I've heard from our members that maybe builds on some of the testimony prior. But the first is just the general challenges with implementing a new program. Our members who employ less than 5 folks, as others who've mentioned, these are flexible and often informal employment relationships with family members or neighbors. Growing up, it was my friends from high school who came and worked with us on our farm, and farmers are now working with their accountants, maybe a farm business management instructor, to figure out what this means and what their obligations are under the law. Second, in relation relatedly is managing this change in terms of balance sheets. Of course, farm income varies wildly, particularly for the smallest operations and particularly for dairies, livestock operators. They're often under a lot of financial pressure. And I'll acknowledge from a farmers union perspective, that financial pressure is much larger than anything you're discussing here today, right? It comes from consolidation on suppliers and buyers of ag products, but the consensus was that this would be meaningful. I talked to one dairy farmer who's working to implement this policy. She's still getting milk checks that are right at her cost of production, right? So she can afford her labor. She's not taking anything out of her business to reinvest, and her thought was this would be meaningful. Third and finally, I think our members, when it comes to a regulatory approach to family farms, appreciate a tiered approach to that regulation. It's hugely difficult to start a family farm, to get that rolling. I talked to one member of ours, actually a constituent of yours, Chair Rarick, who was talking about her decision to bring on employees for the first time and the weight of that and what that meant and how she had to weigh her obligations under the law. And I think a consensus from our leadership is that we appreciate the flexibility for those small businesses to grow, build their business, and as they grow and add more employees, their responsibilities would grow along with them. So wanted to share that philosophy as well, and to share that flexibility would be meaningful and appreciated. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you today, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And our last two testifiers, Bruce Clevin and Lucas Solstrom. Mr. Clevin, please identify yourself and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Bruce Clavin. You'll see I'm listed under ag groups here. It was much easier for me to just jump up here for 2 minutes and round up 5 letters by yesterday at 12:30. And so I'm speaking on behalf of the Minnesota Association of Wheat Growers today. The sugar industry, which is comprised of the Red River Valley sugar beet growers up Senator Kupek's area and parts north of there, Southern Minnesota Sugar Company in Renville, and the Mindac Farmers Cooperative out of Wahpeton, and then finally the Minnesota State Cattlemen's Association. Those are the folks that make the beef for you. I won't reiterate the testimony. The previous folks have done a good job of covering this issue for us. I do want to thank the authors of this bill and point out to the Labor Committee that we have the co-chair of the Ag Committee, Senator Putnam, as well as both vice chairs on this bill. And so it's something that they've heard about at their ag meetings that they've attended, that this is an important issue for our members. And so we just want to throw our support behind passage of this bill.
Thank you very much. Mr. Solstrom, please identify yourself and you may begin.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Members, I'm Lucas Sjostrom, Executive Director of the Minnesota Milk Producers Association, doing my best to represent the interests of Minnesota's 1,600 dairy farms. Also, my farm where I live and woke up this morning fits in this category. So personally, very much understand the issue that we're talking about here. Our farms, as has been told before, are focused on animal care, the environment, being good neighbors, and financially their bottom line. But I need to tell you, we get calls about things from time to time, but I have not received more calls on a state issue than this one right here. In the last 12 months, it's been calls and emails and farmers saying, where do I start? What do I do? The first one I got was from my wife, who does a lot of our payroll, saying, how do I implement this? And that's not the call I want to get. She knows I work here, and I dove into it and have to admit it took many days. Talks to accountants, talks to lawyers, making sure that we were on par. I feel really good. We try to be far above board, but I can't tell you that we're doing it perfectly right. It's difficult to manage at a farm with this few employees as the bill targets, as the amendment targets. So again, especially for those with no HR person where the farmer serves that role along many others, a tracking system like this is very difficult to implement. The disappointment is with farmers who, as has been said before, they operate usually in sole proprietorships, partnerships, or LLCs, often not as their own employee because they're taking whatever's left at the end of the year. So they are not eligible. And when the hay's done, when something breaks and you need to make a part run to town, when the animals need care, of course, they're the ones stepping in. So we fear that the bill as passed has actually made farmers more likely to be unsafe or sick. And so I think we need to think about the implications in these small businesses. Therefore, while, as has been said before, it's difficult for me to draw a line and say, yes, 5 is the right number, because I think it could be negotiated much higher as to how hard it is to manage a small farm. We very much support this amendment, wholeheartedly support Senator Dornick's amendment, and please continue to improve this law. I think it could use a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And members, side note, if you want a perspective on regent candidates other than myself, Mr. Sjostrom sat through all the RCAC interviews. He could help you on that end. So with that, we are going to go to member questions and comments. Members, I gave a bit of leeway to our testifiers because of the groups that they represent. I'm going to ask that we keep our comments and questions, try to keep them to the bill at hand. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to request a roll call on this vote when we get to it.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Umu Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am just kind of struggling with this bill a little bit and wanted to ask about like different approaches that you may have considered. I want to start by saying like it is very difficult for small businesses to have to do compliance on a number of things. My mom owned a small cleaning business for many years, and I'm familiar with her having to be HR and payroll and do all of the things, and I'm very sympathetic to that. I also really want to make sure that all workers do have kind of this floor and basic level of protection. And a lot of these larger employers who do have, you know, folks who handle compliance for them, have large HR departments, are in a different position than our small businesses and our small farmers. So did you think about any, you know, possible incentives and that sort of approach to keep these protections in place for workers, but to sort of alleviate the burden for small business owners?
I'm assuming this is for Senator Dornick?
Yes, for you, Senator Dornick. Thank you.
Senator Dornick.
You know, so this small businesses, they have 500,000 small businesses in Minnesota, and there's 60% are 4 or less. And when that's all businesses. But when I went to the farm, and where I came up with this, I guess partially was I visited we had a tour of a family farm, and it was about 2 years ago. Shortly after this was passed, anyway, so not quite 2, probably a year and a half, after it was passed. And they were like, how can you help me with this? They're a family, and they were struggling. And so this was, as we talked, the exemption. So then continuing on last year and hearing some of the other concerns, this is kind of what came to, which was a good idea, was to do the number of employees. And then Senator Kupek with the sugar beet, you know, there was such an influx of thousands of workers coming in for such a short time. So the seasonal made sense too. So it was there. We tried to do different things for different applications, and agriculture tends to have different exemptions because it's such a unique business. So to answer your question, yes, but not in the realm necessarily you were thinking of. It was more to the number is what we came up with. Yes.
Follow up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate you just kind of walking through some of the changes. I think a lot of my concerns are still there, just reading through some of the testimony from workers. And, you know, we just had a conversation yesterday about frontline workers who are doing this work to really keep our communities safe and healthy and fed in this case. And I know there's a balance we're trying to strike here, but I'm thinking about their experiences and wanting to make sure that, again, we have that basic floor and basic level of protection for workers. And also, like, you know, the folks who are doing this work are disproportionately workers of color. And so, you know, I'm struggling with thinking about how they're impacted and how we're leaving them out of these protections that we feel all workers deserve. So that's where I'm at on the bill, but I do appreciate you walking through some of the changes that you made.
I have a quick question, Senator Dornick. I know when the original bill came through, there had been an amendment offered. I believe one was, or a couple of amendments. This was similar to something that was adopted by the Senate at one point. Can you tell me, are there any major differences from what had been passed through the Senate, or is this kind of that same language?
This is the exact same language, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. I have a couple of questions, but one for Mr. Moore. He mentioned 1,500 establishments, 2,500 employees per UI data. Is that specifically on the, the population we're addressing in this bill, or is that kind of an aggregate population of farms in general?
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the question, Senator Pratt. That is narrowed to the specific population in this bill. So the data was narrowed to NAICS codes for agricultural employers and then sorted by size to include employers with 1 to 5 employees.
Senator Pratt.
So, Mr. Moore, if I have if I had a feed store or a seed store, or I did herbicides, and I employ less, would I be counted in that number as well?
Mr. Moore.
Thanks for the question. I don't think I have enough detailed knowledge of what establishments would be included in those NAICS codes to answer that question today, but I can look into it and try to follow up.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Dornink, you know, as I think about agriculture, and you specifically mentioned farms and farm corporations, I'm curious, would that include some of these ancillary services as well? The feed store, the guy who applies herbicides or crop dusts or anything like that?
Mr. Moore.
No, that was for Senator Dornink.
Senator Dornink.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that would. It's farmer, family farm, or family corporation employees. So it's 5 employees or less for.
So oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So if I've got a seed store and I have 3 employees, I would be included in this exemption.
That is my understanding, yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you know, Scott County is kind of a unique area. We have a very suburban part, and we have a very rural part. And, you know, maybe contrary to the experience that Senator Verbaeten has, a lot of the people that we've got working tend to be teenagers, high school kids, FFA, you know, those types of folks. And we talked a lot about the one-size-fits-all, and I was wondering if Ms. Schothorst or Mr. Beshi could come back. I'd like to talk about some of the other industries that are being impacted. I've got a small restaurant in Prior Lake that's really struggling with the SST.
Senator Pratt, let's try to keep it to the egg.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm frustrated that we're just focusing on ag and not the entire problem. And if you want me to focus on ag, I'll do that. And so I guess I won't need Ms. Schothorst, but this is a problem that we're experiencing statewide. And so thank you, Mr. Chair. And then if we're going to keep it just to that, I was wondering if Mr. Broughton could. I didn't quite catch the stat. How many Minnesota farms we've lost since 1997. It was about 20%, but I can't remember the number, and you email it to me. I'm not going to bring you back up to the testifier table, but I think it's a shocking number. My fear is that when we, not to overstep your directive here too bad, but I think we really need to be looking at this at a more holistic level. Senator Dornink, I'll support your bill, but I hope we can have a broader discussion.
Any other? Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I find it interesting how, you know, we mentioned how this, you know, impacts people of color or whatever, however you want to put that. And I had person of color talk to me yesterday how this is impacting them negatively because it's harder for them to start a business, a farm, right? So, and it's not just them, it's everybody. If you're a small business, this is impacting you negatively. And our food comes from farmers. Yeah, I mean, I worked on a farm for 5 or 6 years, and if the farmer I work for had to, you know, give health, not that they don't want to be mean, but it's just the way it is. I can go choose to work somewhere else, right? If I know what I'm getting when I work at a farm. So if you don't want to work on a farm, don't work on a farm. You know how it is. It's hard work. But I go into that expecting, and I know that, I know where our food comes from. But also, we have to look at the fact that, you know, we might have people coming here that this is negatively impacting, like you talked about, and they can't start a farm because they can't afford it. You know, this is hurting them. You know, when you're first starting, we need to help these people. And by having this bill, it's helping them. And I'm assuming, so I am going to ask you a question. I'm guessing you talk to farmers and they like this. I did myself, but, right?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, so this is, as one of the testifiers brought up, this is one of the top issues that I hear in rural Minnesota. It's not just agriculture, but that's specifically what this bill addresses. So yeah, I've heard it many times. And they're excited to have the exemption. And the flexibility that one of the testifiers talked about too is really important. They can opt in and do it, or that they don't. And then the challenges of managing and trying to get this in. I actually had a farmer that just called a little bit ago, and I was trying to share with him some of the information on, he was talking about the video we'd watched to learn how to implement this. And then as he was talking, I was like, well, no, that was the paid family leave one. That's not the Earn Sick and Safe. And so these farmers they're not with it. It's just they're busy, and it's trying to figure this stuff out. They just want to work.
Right. Well, sorry.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, right, a farmer that owns a small farm is literally working 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And then we put something on them that's hard to figure out. They just can't do it. It's hard. You know, if we're going to do it, it's got to be simpler, I guess, right? They need help because these people that own these businesses are literally working every day all year long. They don't go on vacations. They don't get help. This is just what's going on. So we need to help them, and this bill will help them.
Thank you. Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you, Senator Dornink, for bringing this bill forward. I think it's a nice step forward also, especially for small farms, which I have a lot in my district. I would say this for the committee to think through, okay? You know, government can pass well-meaning bills, all right? And I think this bill was well-meaning to care about the employees. But we do have to look at the ripple effect, okay? And I'll give you one example. When Obamacare was passed,
Senator Gruenhagen,
I know it'll be, but it does apply to this bill. When Obamacare was passed, a lot of the employees that had a full-time job and health benefits got moved by their employer to 30 hours or less. They lost their health insurance benefits, and they had to get another part-time job to pay the bills. So sometimes when government passes a mandate, it actually backfires in many cases. And I think this bill, at least in the area of farming, will help alleviate a little bit of that. Thank you.
Senator Haschat.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Senator Dornink, for bringing this bill. I just wanted to highlight that my family were farmers. The Hochschild family farm was out of Wahpeton, Breckenridge, so I appreciate the testimony from the gentleman that represents folks there. But, you know, I think for a lot of family farms, you were, back in the day, reliant on big families. I had, 6 uncles, right, that all worked on the farm, including my dad. They wouldn't be exempt under this because there'd be 6 of them if they were technically employees. But anyway, I just highlight that because I certainly prefer our ag economy to be based on family farmers. Maybe that's an old-fashioned view, but I do think there is value in us having small family farms. I think there's value in small businesses. Not that corporations are necessarily bad, but I think it's good for all of us in our economy when we have sustainable family businesses and family farms. And my fear, much like my own family, is that we're moving away from that. It's becoming unsustainable and inefficient and burdensome, right, to have a family farm. We no longer have the Hochschild family farm. My uncle eventually got out of the business, sold to a bigger farm. My cousin now sells farm equipment, so still in the economy, still working in that area, but we no longer have a farm to visit together as a family. And that makes me a little sad, but it also makes me a little afraid for the way our economy is going, more and more corporate, more and more big. And sometimes we have to think about what is the right balance and approach to state policy that doesn't just incentivize the the consolidation of our businesses. Because oftentimes what happens with some policies is that people look at it and say, it's not worth it, right? I'm not going to do this, I'm gonna sell out. And is that outcome what we were hoping for? Maybe some would say it is. In my opinion, it's not. I would have preferred the small family farm to continue to be able to operate rather than to consolidate, go to the corporate model that can handle some of these things better. So I'm not saying this is the only policy. I'm not that impacts family farmers, and I do think this is good policy, ESST in general. It's why I voted for it. It's why I support workers having these options. But I do think when we think about the overall impact of policy, we have to consider what the outcomes can be, which can often mean less family farms. And my hope is that this might help us sustain them. And I think that's why we're seeing testimony from farm groups that are saying this would be helpful to have this flexibility for our family farmers. And I hope that's what we attain with this policy. Thanks for bringing it.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some questions for Josiah Moore or somebody from the Department of Labor and Industry. May I proceed? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'm wondering, we've heard a couple of different numbers on how many people would have their rights taken away with this bill. And I think that you had said a number of, you said it's difficult to estimate because it's, maybe we don't have a really good idea, but you said, according to, was it the unemployment data? You estimated around 2,500 employees, and I think that we have some research from the USDA data that actually gave us about 10 times that many workers. It was almost 27,000 workers that could be affected. And we've heard a lot today about the family aspect of a family farm. And I think we do all have this idea, and many of us have in our families some family farm history where the family worked the farm together and everybody did that work. I'm wondering if you have any data could tell us a little bit more about who these people are who we are considering taking this earned sick and safe time right away from.
Mr. Moore, do you want to take that one?
Thanks for the question. As addressing the different data sets, you mentioned the USDA data set from the federal level. We at the department haven't had a chance to dig into that data set. One thing we noticed at a high level was that it referred to workers and not employees, so it's possible it's capturing people who are treated as independent contractors in agricultural work, thus the larger number. But again, we haven't dug into that data set. That's one theory of the difference. And then I don't think the UI data that I referenced has yielded the department any additional insight more than I've shared into who these workers are.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we don't really have a good grasp necessarily. We have some, we do though, however, have some letters, and I hope that everyone on the committee will have an opportunity to read through these letters. They are from a farm worker advocacy organization, and their personal requests and accounts for us to keep this benefit, and they talk about that they use it and they need it. I have some other questions for you about how earned sick and safe time is being rolled out specifically for these businesses that would fall under this law. So if I own and run one of these family farms, a small family farm, how would I have found out, and are there efforts from the Department of Labor and Industry to reach out to somebody like me to educate me about the law?
Mr. Moore.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for this question. Yes, the department has been doing outreach and education activities across 2023 and 2024. We've reached over 20,000 individuals through our outreach and education activities totaling over 400 events, both virtual and in person throughout the state. Those include events really across the state, the in-person ones. So we've been to Marshall, Owatonna, Brainerd, Lonsdale, Pine City, International Falls, many, many more. So we are getting out into the state for the in-person events, as well as virtual that anyone can attend. And some of those events have been agricultural industry specific. I know we did an event with AgriGrowth and Midwest Food Products Association in March of 2024, focused on Earn Sick and Safe Time. And then there were 2 other agricultural events I found in our data set specific to that industry. So getting out with different industries across the state to do this outreach. And that's work we continue to do. So if there are industry groups that are interested in hosting outreach events, that is still possible to schedule and make happen.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I wonder if you could help us kind of get our mind around. We've heard some of these, from some of the testimony, you know, we heard adjectives like these businesses are being challenged by Earn Sick and Safe Time. We also heard claims about just distrust of employees, that they don't trust that employees are using it for reasons that they actually need it. And so they're sort of accusing them of of using it in a spurious way, right? There's mistrust there. That we also heard it described as an onerous burden that these farmers are having to make sure that they are keeping track of the hours and then granting 1 hour for every 30 hours worked in potential Earned Sick and Safe Time if a worker elects to actually use that. I'm wondering if you could just run us through, pretend I'm a farmer, I am wondering, like, I'm confused about this, I need some information. What do I have to do to make sure I'm in compliance with Earn Sick and Safe Time?
I'm getting pointed to our other testifier. Can you identify yourself for the record and then answer the question, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Peter I'm Peter Nicolai. I'm a program administrator with the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, and I focus on the Earn Sick and Safe Time law. So to answer your question, Senator McEwen, the first thing we would do is direct them to our website. We have a checklist that we provide all employers on how to comply with Earn Sick and Safe Time law and the requirements of the law. To run you through that checklist, the first thing we're going to do is ask the employer to do an assessment of whether the employee is anticipated to work 80 hours during the course of the year. If they are, then they should give their employees a notice of their rights under the law, how they're going to accrue, what their accrual year is, the right against retaliation. And we have a sample form that the employer could download off of our website. It's plug and play. They add their name to it and give it to their employees, either on January 1st or when they start work. After that, they're going to have to track hours worked like they would for payroll, and track the accruals. They don't necessarily have to do accruals. They could do one of the front loads. They could do a 48-hour front load or an 80-hour front load and just count backwards if that's easier for them. The other thing they're going to have to do is give a statement to their employees like they would with their pay stub or, under the cleanup bill last session, they could come up with an alternative solution that just lets them know at the end of every pay period, this is what you have remaining for Earn Sick and Safe Time.
Thank you. Thank you. And if I might just, building on that, say I am a farmer who employs, maybe even some teens locally, maybe some people who are migrant and seasonally come up, and I would fall into this category, and all of a sudden I find out later on, oh, I guess I needed to be making sure I was keeping track of this and make sure that the workers knew that they were entitled to this Earn Sick and Safe Time benefit, and I didn't do it. And then they get in touch with you. How would the department handle that?
Mr. Nicolai.
Thank you. Senator McEwen, One of the things that we've done specifically for Earn Sick and Safe Time is we've created a new intervention, a warning letter. So that checklist that I talked about, we would send a letter to that employer explaining the law and providing them a checklist. They wouldn't have to do anything to respond to us. They could just run through that checklist, make sure they're complying with the law. We have found great success with that. In addition, if we got a second complaint about that employer, we would do what's called an inform and educate, which is a second letter, but would require a response. And we would explain the steps of how they come into compliance, and they would have to show, sorry, my mistake. Here's the notice that we gave all of our employees. We're doing the accrual now. And people have come into compliance. And that's what we want to do. We want to educate the employer to make sure that they know how to comply. And we want to create a level playing field so that all the employers that are following the law are on the same footing as those who aren't following the law. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same footing.
Thank you. And so if somebody makes a mistake the first time and it's either reported or they ask for help, you're there to help them, and then even they can have another complaint come in later and you're still there asking, how can we help you? We'll figure this out. Here's the checklist of things. Just help us. We'll make sure that you have what you need.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions that I have for them. I just, if I may, Mr. Chair, just offer my comment right now, or I could wait if whatever's, which we, thank you very much for the information. You know, it strikes me to be very ethically and morally painful that when we're talking about family farms going out of business at high numbers, and for a myriad of large-scale economic reasons, a lot having to do with monopoly, corporate power and dominance, and the ways in which our economy functions to snuff out small farmers in particular, that the solution that we would look at here at the legislature, because apparently we don't have the political courage to actually take on the big issues, is to say, you know what might help them is if we just got rid of this requirement that would help these workers, many of whom has been noted are likely people of color, people doing very, very hard work. It seems to me that these are the people who probably need this benefit some of the most in our community. So I think it's true that it is about trade-offs, it is about balancing, but in my opinion, this is just so wrong. So wrong. I wonder what the plan is for these workers. If this benefit is taken away, as is proposed by this legislation, let's be clear, they have this benefit right now. And we have the letters from these workers telling us that they want us to keep it and they use it. If we take it away from them and say, sorry, because of the place where you're working, because of the nature of this work that you're doing and who you work for, you don't get that benefit. What happens when they are sick, or when their child is sick, or when they have a doctor appointment that they need to go to that they've been putting off because they've been working and working and working really hard? They're no different than any of us. They need this time too. So I plead with all of my colleagues that when we are looking at these big systemic real issues, that we not look for solutions on the backs of the least powerful people in our society. So for that, I strongly oppose the bill, and I did already ask for a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. I'm going to make a few comments before I look to any other member comments. Senator Dornink, I want to thank you for bringing this bill. This is one small little piece that I think we need to be talking about. I want to speak from the perspective of similar as a one-man operation. I completely understand the aspect of these very small family farms that are looking for some flexibility in these things that we as the legislature tend to push down on folks when they are always, in my opinion, doing their best to take care of people around them. But I will say, I had a number of times as a one-man contractor where I have had my customers reaching out, wanting me to take on more work. And I have been unwilling to do that because I'm an electrician. I am not a manager. I am not an HR person. I am not an accountant. But to take on employees in today's world, that is what you are being asked to do, to be. And we are stifling this growth of our smallest employers, entrepreneurs who want to start out and grow. But if you cannot handle all of those things and report it to the state, you are not going to do that. And I think what we fail to understand, and I've seen many times in the contracting world, you are servicing customers who have demands to keep their operations going. They need things to continue happening. And the owners of our businesses who do that, when they have an employee who works with them, helps keep their customers satisfied, they bend over backwards to help them out when they need it. And that is what we fail to acknowledge and recognize here many, many times. And we are cutting them off at the knees and doing the things that they believe they can do to help their employees when they need it, when we dictate to them what it is they have to do. So I appreciate this. I think this is a step we're hearing from people within this industry that they need this flexibility, because I do believe they will help their folks, their employees, when they need that help. Any other, Senator Liskey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Dornink, for bringing this forward. This is actually one of the most common things in my district that I heard about over the break. Is a lot of the small businesses came to my office, even being that I run my own small business. Some of this is cost prohibitive from starting businesses, but it's also really rough on those small businesses that are already up and running, especially the family farms. So the family farmers, they come to see me all the time. They come when they're hurting most. They don't come just because they want to come say hi. They come to see me because something's not working right. And so they come to talk to me about lots of different things, but sometimes this comes up. And, something that Senator McEwen said, and I think I agree with, is that there's really important times where if you're sick, if your kid is sick, something comes up, that you do need to take time. The one thing I've learned about small farms is that you get that time whether it's offered or not offered. They make it available for you. It doesn't have to be a mandate from the government telling them they have to do it, because most of the time they just do it. The hard part is that, I've talked to some of these constituents, and the business owner side, they get these employees that find out that they had this, and they saved up a whole bunch of time, and then they used it, in my opinion, incorrectly as vacation time at the end of the year. It's not what it's for. It was supposed to be used for if there's an emergency, if there's a sick situation, not if they want to go on vacation, not to spend the time, for whatever reason somewhere else. And so that's concerning to me, is that this, whilst has good intentions, and I support the idea of people needing to have paid sick time, this doesn't solve the problem of how people are using it. And so hopefully with the small family farms, we can, at least with this little piece, make room for that. Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and Senator Dornink. I have sympathy for the farmers that are trying to run their farm, and also for the employees. As we mentioned, it's very hard work to survive in today's society with a small family farm. But I don't quite understand the difficulty we're talking about here. Once you decide you're going to go beyond unpaid labor of family members and hire people, you have to keep track for the wages that they're being paid. And it's not that much more difficult than to keep track of the hours that they're working. That's part of what you're paying them for. And so 1 hour off for every 30 hours, it's a simple spreadsheet, Google Doc. You know, I'm sure there's examples out there that you can use to keep track. So I really don't think it's that burdensome. And I think for employers, farmers who care about their employees, they're obviously going to give them time off when they're sick, and hopefully will pay them, but not all might do that. And I think that if an employee abuses the sick time privilege, then they will just not get hired back by that farmer because there's a trust issue there. And you're right, the work has to be done. The other thing I was going to bring up that I think it just makes it more complicated than for these small businesses. So say, you know, I've got 4 employees, and then in the middle of the season, I decide I have to hire a 5th one or 6th one in this case. Now, all of a sudden, I have to go back and add up the hours, and because now I'm not in compliance. And this is not a catch-all legislation. I think the department has been very reasonable in educating people and warning people about how to comply. So I kind of think this is a slippery slope, and I think that a lot of well-meaning people, I'm not talking about Senator Dornink, he has indicated this is all he's interested in doing. But I think some people just don't like their sick and safe time law and see this as just a step in eliminating the entire law. And I think that's a grave disservice to the workers of the state. So I'm going to be a no vote on this bill.
Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to everybody who testified. You know, I spent a lot of years as a manager, and I've seen a lot of changes over those years. And one, you know, we used to grant our starting employees 2 weeks vacation and 10 days of sick time. And over time, we noticed that employees were using their sick time for regular days off, vacation, whatever. And so we went to more of a paid time off model. We took it from, you know, essentially 4 weeks down to 3 weeks. Everybody got 3 weeks of PTO, and then eventually that got even ratcheted down a little bit more. But that's how we had to try to manage it, because there was, in some cases, I think it's not necessarily nefarious. Not everybody understands the difference between the two, and they're afraid to lose a benefit, and so they make that change. And I think about the fact that we focus on a few bad actors and we punish all the good employers. It's not just about a Google Doc or spreadsheet. It's about all the documentation that goes on. It's about all the enforcement that goes on. It's the worry about being caught doing it wrong. And it's hard because, you know, I spent 30 years in banking and financial services, and everybody seems to think that they know banking laws because they have a checking account. And that's not the case. There's a lot more that goes into running that business. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, Senator Pappas, at all, but, you know, I think that's the trap that we tend to fall in. We tend to forget that there's a relationship, a symbiotic relationship. Employers need employees, and employees need employers. And when I hear Mr. Laurie's testimony or Senator Rarick's discussion about not wanting to hire somebody and expand their business because of the regulatory burden that comes with it, we're killing that entrepreneurial spirit. We're killing that growth. I'm going to be a yes vote on this, Mr. Chair, but I do have a concern. I have a concern that if we do this for agriculture, we're going to close the door on future reform of paid family medical leave. We should be focusing on the bad actor employers, not the good actor employers, and not treating everything as a one-size-fits-all solution. we've found in this legislature, one size fits all rarely fits anybody. So I hope that we continue the discussion going forward. I do have a concern that we're going to close the door on future reform, but I hope we'll continue to have that discussion. Thank you.
Senator Kupek.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was debating, and I was like, oh, we'll finish up. But obviously, and I'm an author on this bill, and Senator Dornink and I have had long discussions about this, and I am completely in favor of earned sick and safe time. And as Senator Pappas said, it should be, and this was my envisioning when we passed this, that it should be as easy as some kind of Google Doc and Google spreadsheet. It just does not seem to be that way, because it is a constant parade of people who have come to me and said, this is hard, this is complicated. And I'm not sure where between what we did and wanting to give this benefit to as many people as we possibly can, where that got so difficult. And I'm just not sure where that disconnect happened. And particularly, as we've all heard today, I think, about family farms and the uniqueness of that operation, particularly smallest ones, that and sometimes are right on the edge. And there's some of, and as Senator Hochschild, I think so eloquently put about that family farm, we know that those family farms, those small businesses, those are the backbones of our small community. And when things get consolidated and into larger corporations, Main Street starts to vacate out in those smaller towns. And that is not what we want to see. We want small business interacting with small business, and that needs to keep going forward. So if this is just at least even a message of like, if we're going to do this, let's make it as easy as it can to implement and check that off and give this benefit to as many people as we possibly can, because it is something that people need. People get sick, people can't get their kids in time, they need it. But we need to make it as easy as possible for the employer to implement that benefit. And so where that balance is, I'm not quite sure we're there. I don't know what every time I ask, I don't seem I get a good answer. So I think that this is a small step we can take. And I thank Senator Dornink for working on this. I appreciate it.
Any other committee members before I go to Senator Dornink? Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much. Just real quick, I just wanted to make sure, because there were a couple of comments made about reporting, and I believe there's no reporting requirement for earned sick and safe time.
Senator Dornink, closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and what a great discussion. I thank you so much for each and every one and your comments and the testifiers behind me. Just the heartfelt and the passion that's here, and labor and industry. I always said that the importance of both are so important, and to strike that balance of how do we get there? Why is it more personal to me? To Senator Hochschild's point, I grew up on a family farm. I grew up on a dairy farm. And those workers that work on a dairy farm, the family and those workers, my dad said, you don't have to go to work, it surrounds you. And it does, it's everywhere. But it was a great life. The work ethic I have is because of that training I got on the farm, and milking cows and the memories, the baling hay, all of those things. That's why this resonates with me so much, because it's that's my life experience. And then with the businesses, I was forced into a small business because I got laid off in 2009. So the small business part of me, too, of being laid off with lots of kids, and what am I going to do? Start a business. And that's what we are. The greatness of this country is anybody can start a business. But it's hard, and many businesses fail in the first 5 years. And so, again, we're trying to get that labor and industry in that sweet spot of us as legislators being a partnership with them, not stepping on the scale for either side. And that's what I've tried to do, and I've continued to say. And to those family farms and businesses, but the risk, the pressure, the late nights, the bookworks, the phone calls, you look at the weather, all these things, the stress of trying to make a living is hard. It's hard on them. And so we as in the labor and industry, my goal is to have those earned sick and safe. I agree with you, Senator Pappas, there's a place for that. But the sweet spot, that's what we're looking for. And to find that where that we can not overburden, you know, we have the taxes and all these things that these businesses are trying to, and farms are trying to survive. And it's not easy. So again, I hope this bill is just you know, a help to these farmers, and I appreciate, I gave a shout out to them and what they do for the economy in Minnesota. We're grateful to agriculture, and thank you for, again, the testifiers and all those people they represent. And I hope it can pass this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And with that, Senator Dornink renews his motion that Senate File 310 be recommended and passed to the Agriculture Committee. Chelsea, will you please take the roll?
Yes, Senator. Co-Chair Dornink?
Aye.
Co-Chair McEwen? No. Vice Chair Gruenhagen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hochschild?
Yes.
Senator Kupek?
Yes.
Senator Leskey?
Yes.
Senator Marty? No. Senator Umu Verbatim?
No.
Senator Pappas?
No.
Senator Pratt?
Aye.
Senator Rarick?
Aye.
Senator Weisenberg?
Aye.
Receiving 8 aye votes and 4 nay votes, Senate File 310 is passed and re-referred to the Senate on Agriculture. Senator Dornink, or Senator McEwen, do either of you have any announcements you would wish to make about next meetings?
We're still working on the agenda, so we will work together and get that for our time next Thursday. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I would just add that we are, as Co-Chair Dornink said, having some discussions about what will be on the agenda for next week, but I would say that we are looking at the possibility of having some confirmations. So that's what we're looking forward to. Thank you.
Very good. With that, we are adjourned.